Good morning. It's an honor to be here and a challenge to follow Chris Hart and Jeff Weiss, but I'm going to try. I'm Andy Black, President and CEO of the Association of Oil Pipelines. AOPL represents the owners and operators of hazardous liquid pipelines carrying crude oil, refined petroleum products, natural gas liquids, and CO2 moved as a liquid. We are proud of our collaboration with the Pipeline Safety Trust. We're thankful to have been invited again. This industry takes pipeline safety very seriously. Before I start, I want to single out two people for some thanks. First is Rick Kessler. Rick is the Vice Chairman of the Pipeline Safety Trust, as many of you know, a friend of mine, and we are able to have the types of conversations that make Washington work when it does. And those conversations are about identifying common goals and finding ways to pursue them together. And we don't agree on everything, but we have found things to work on to the success of both. Second is Peter Lidiak. My colleague is the Pipeline Director of the American Petroleum Institute, AOPL and API partner on pipeline safety and many other issues, and Peter's answers are often better than mine. I'd like to give you briefly our perspective on pipeline safety reauthorization first. I'd like to say that we'd like a bill. We believe PHMSA programs should be reauthorized. We know that often that brings changes to the pipeline safety laws. We think those should be balanced and thoughtful and not knee-jerk reactions without proper understanding of what happens to accidents. We see reauthorization as an opportunity to improve the law in several places. I will speak about these individually in a moment. And then we remind Congress and the public that different than Bellingham in 1999, Congress and PHMSA now have a mature set of pipeline safety laws and regulations that cover the major causes of pipeline releases. We know, as Jeff said, that reauthorization often results in congressionally mandated rulemakings to PHMSA. We accept that. We're generally not asking for them. We think that when Congress does that, they should give flexibility to PHMSA. When PHMSA inspectors are in our member companies' offices, we know that they are aggressive, they ask tough questions, they ask the right questions, but they also work hard to understand what it's like to operate a pipeline. And we think that the technical decisions made about pipeline safety regulation should be made by PHMSA and not by a Congress that is distracted on other issues, as Jeff said. And we hope that Congress will not tell PHMSA to implement one-size-fits-all situations, as Mr. Hart said, on an industry that has a variety of operating circumstances and types of assets. Similarly, when Congress says that PHMSA should go study something, we think Congress should not presume the outcome of that study. There are several cases in some of the bills before Congress where Congress has not only required a study, but also required PHMSA to do a rulemaking afterwards without knowing what the study finds. We think that's backwards. We think if the study shows a gap or a need for a regulation, we're certainly going to support PHMSA doing regulations. Last point is a little bit arcane, but it's important in how PHMSA does its rulemakings. We believe that any requirements should be done under Section 60102 of the Pipeline Safety Act. And just a brief word on those. First, it requires PHMSA to produce cost-benefit analyses for its regulations. That's an important part of regulatory law throughout the federal government, but it isn't always required of every rulemaking. We think that's important. We know the costs for integrity management and other safety regulations are borne by shareholders, are borne by our shippers, and can be passed on to the retail consumers who use the products carried in our pipelines. Second, risk assessments are important to be done. Honest, technical, scientific-based risk assessments. These are hazardous liquid pipelines carrying unsafe products that we're trying to manage safely. Our operators are managing risks and threats every day. The risks should be properly studied. And lastly, we believe regulations should be reviewed by the Technical Advisory Committee. Industry members populate that, but as a minority. There are an equal number of public, government, and industry members on these committees. I've seen them. While I don't participate in them, they are subject matter experts from the industry who participates, and they have identified some very helpful compromises that have made regulations better and given good input to PHMSA. One of the benefits we see from reauthorization could be improving incident notification laws. We in the Trust have a common goal, and that's prompt notification to the National Response Center of an accident. But we think those National Response Center procedures need. Right now, when an operator contacts the National Response Center in those few precious minutes after an incident, the operator faces a challenge. They need to produce a precise numerical estimate of the volumes that are released. We think giving regulators, giving first responders an understanding of the size of a release is quite important. But we believe that an operator shouldn't have to confront the problem of making a one-time estimate that can never be revised. So we would like legislation to tell the National Response Center, let operators report a range, small, large, medium, very large, as defined by the Secretary of Transportation, to get that challenge away and to get us back on to the important thing to focus on, which is responding to the incident. Then let an operator come back pretty quickly with more precise information. We want first responders and communities to know how big a release is, but we don't think we should face that challenge that causes an inherent conflict when trying to respond quickly. Another place we think the law can benefit pipeline safety is on damage prevention. We share a common goal with the trust here of less damage to pipelines. Why? Excavation damage, as you've often heard me and others say, is the leading cause of pipeline accidents that hurt people and kill people. Too many states have laws that are weak or not enforced right. And one way that they are weak is one-call exemptions. We believe Congress and PHMSA should do more to push the states. There are some threats to the states that Congress has already passed and the President has already signed. That's the risk of federal enforcement of one-call violation or the loss of damage prevention grant funds. And it's that first one, federal enforcement, that we think really has the opportunity to get the states to improve their programs. We hope as PHMSA implements this authority that they make the states on notice that federal enforcement is possible so that the states will improve their game on this. All three of the bills, we're pleased to say, have incremental improvements to these one-call programs. They would require PHMSA to disallow state programs that have one-call exemptions for municipal and state governments and their contractors. We think that's a great start. We think more should be done, but that's a good place to start. Another way to carry this forward and make further improvements is the two studies in the House bills that would require DOT to report to Congress on one-call exemptions in the states and the threat to pipeline safety that they cause. A third goal of ours in reauthorization deals with improving the PHMSA enforcement processes. Congress has never given PHMSA the guidance on how to do its enforcement that is given to many of the other regulatory agencies. This isn't PHMSA's fault. This is the fault of prior Congresses. PHMSA has made some great strides lately on fair improvements to enforcement processes. We hope they continue them, and we'd like to codify them. We think operators deserve the same Administrative Procedures Act protections that are found in other federal agencies. Why? Because enforcement's up. Enforcement is up in both the number of proposed violations and also the size of the penalties. And one common aspect of all three of the major bills before the Congress now is another increase in maximum civil penalties. Our goals in enforcement reform: first, an independent hearing officer. PHMSA has just recently named presiding officials at headquarters and in the regions. We think that's a great start. We're thankful for it. We think the public benefits from that too. But it's important to codify it. Next, a hearing transcript is not available right now to the operator, and we think it should be by Congress. These two elements are in the Senate bill. The third and the fourth elements are not, and we hope they will be in the law that is sent to the President. A right to an expedited review of a corrective action order. As many of you may know, a corrective action order is a huge tool. Tells PHMSA, PHMSA tells an operator, shut down the line, you need to fix this thing before you come back up. Operators take those very seriously. In the rare case where an operator wants to talk with PHMSA about that, wants to get a review, we think PHMSA should be told to give that operator the review on a timely basis. Next, we believe that there should be a separation of functions on the PHMSA staff working on enforcement issues. This is something that FERC has and other federal agencies. We believe PHMSA should be told to do it. Lastly, we think there should be an appropriate standard for judicial review, and that's a common element of all of the bills. What's not in here and what should not be characterized as our goals on administrative enforcement provision is a delay in issuing orders. We're not trying to stop PHMSA from issuing notices of proposed rulemaking, final penalties, corrective action orders, or safety orders. We're not trying to require that these hearings be before administrative law judges. And we would like a specific deadline for reviewing a corrective action order, but we understand that the Congress may not be ready for that right now, so we'll take on a timely basis and work with PHMSA and try to have that as fast as possible with good cause. And PHMSA can determine the timing on that. As Jeff said, PHMSA does not just wait for Congress to tell it what to do. Our companies certainly know that. There are many regulations that have been issued and that we're implementing or that are coming soon that we're working on. First, control room management and low stress phase 2, both will have safety benefits. Both are being implemented now. We don't yet have the results of both because they are being implemented now, but I expect that they will improve the safety record. Next, damage prevention. The PHMSA has done an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. We hope that they will soon issue a notice of proposed rulemaking. We know they're working hard on that. And we hope, again, that it really pushes the states to improve their programs or puts in place the machinery for the federal government to act when the states don't. And then the big one staring us in the face is sometime next year we expect to have a proposed rule on general hazardous liquid pipeline safety. We know that PHMSA is reviewing many elements. When we responded to PHMSA's advance notice of proposed rulemaking on hazardous liquid pipelines, we made some suggestions that PHMSA could require of hazardous liquid pipeline operators. And the first deals with repairs outside of high consequence areas. As many of you know, there is a specific repair criteria that operators must follow when they do the integrity management assessments. Certain types of features qualify as immediate repairs, and so the operator must address those immediately. We commit to PHMSA that when we do assessments outside of high consequence areas, and we generally do it in the liquids side, that when we find something that qualifies as an immediate repair, they can expect that of us. They can require us to do immediate repairs inside and outside to manage those most critical threats on the same schedule. Second, we believe high consequence areas can be redesignated to use new information. We recognize that this means high consequence areas could be expanded. Population data from the census, new water intake data, we think PHMSA should take a look at. And finally, leak detection capability evaluations are required right now in high consequence areas, and that's something that PHMSA can inspect when it does its audit of a company. We believe that PHMSA can require operators to conduct those evaluations throughout the DOT-regulated transmission systems. Carl showed you the improvements in the safety record of hazardous liquids. We'll be talking with you further in subsequent sessions about our continued steps on performance improvement. Volume on the left, or frequency on the left, volume on the right. It's a success story over the last decade. We're down to some small numbers now. Now, when you have a few more than that small number, you see some increases in the trends. We want to make sure that this safety record hasn't plateaued, and we're working hard to bend it downward further. We look further at the data on all the different types of pipeline safety failures, corrosion, third-party equipment, pipe materials, and seams, and we're pleased to see that over the last decade, failures caused by each of those causes are down. That shows that we're getting better. We have these different strategies for working on these different types of risks, and we see that they are making improvements. Then we look further at time-dependent failures because we know there's concerns about aging infrastructure. I know you have a panel on this later. We've tried to mine the data to see how our record is on failures caused by time-dependent problems like corrosion. And we've been pleased with what we've seen, a 36% decrease in failures caused by time-dependent causes. The large ones are down 50%. On older pipe before 1950, faster still by 83%. And that's not really just line replacement. That's really the sophistication of the tools and the better strategies by operators to address these pipelines and to manage them right. Final thoughts. Our industry is doing much to improve. We've all talked about the goal of zero accidents. Tim Felt with Colonial Pipeline was intending to come here and tell you about our industry-wide effort that he's a leader in. He's ill and he's not going to be able to come. Another member of the industry is going to speak on this, and we're excited to tell you about it. Our goal, again, is zero accidents. We do think the reauthorization bill will help pipeline safety. We think the damage prevention should really help there. And it's important for us all to recognize that PHMSA is managing a comprehensive set of regulations. They're updating them. They are in our house every day. On the tour yesterday that Carl mentioned, some of the questions from trust members were good ones. And they asked, when was the last time PHMSA inspector here? How often does that happen? And they had good answers. The public should be comforted by the fact that this regulator is on the case. Our operators certainly know it. Thank you.